The song didn't come from a stage. It slipped between the scent of warm butter and the slow swish of a mop at 4:53 a.m. inside a bakery still dark and unopened on the edge of Redfield, Texas. It wasn't clear or confident. Just a few half-formed notes barely there, but enough to make one of the bakers pause, tilt her head slightly, as if she'd caught something delicate brushing past. Emily Rhodes, 12 years old, didn't call it singing. She simply murmured while scrubbing floors and restacking trays that hadn't finished cooling. Her shoes were frayed at the edges, the soles worn down to fabric. Her cream-colored apron was always a bit crooked, tied with an old shoelace. But she never once complained. Her mother, Catherine, worked the early shift from 4 a.m. to noon. Then she'd catch a few hours of sleep before heading to a second job at a gas station near the highway. On the wall of their beat-up trailer, taped above the light switch, was a handwritten note in faded blue ink. "We may be poor, but we don't live small." Emily had memorized that line like scripture, the way she'd memorized how her mother folded shirts, or sneezed after sniffing baking powder, or fell silent whenever she played the old cassette tape, the one with her voice on it, back when she still dreamed of stages and lights before she left it all behind at her mother's hospital bedside. At Oak Ridge Elementary, Emily didn't have many friends. Everyone knew her as the bread girl, the one who always smelled faintly of butter and sugar. Her uniform had faded into the color of overcooked oatmeal, the hem patched with mismatched thread. The other kids weren't cruel exactly, but they weren't kind either. She usually sat in the last row where it was easier to blend into the wall. No one called her name during group work. No one asked to borrow a pencil or offered to share a snack. But if anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed something in her dark brown eyes, a song not yet sung quietly, echoing inside her like a melody with no words. And then on a Monday morning, the PA crackled overhead. "Talent Week begins today. If you'd like to perform, please add your name to the sign-up sheet outside the office by Wednesday." The classroom buzzed. TikTok dances, piano solos, beatboxing. Some kids had costumes already picked out. Emily kept her head down as usual, but that night after washing dishes, she went to her room, pulled out an old notebook, one that still held a second-grade math problem, a faded New Year's wish, and a few scattered diary entries, and wrote Scarborough Fair, Emily Rhodes, singing. She didn't know exactly why she wrote it. Maybe it was the recording of her mother singing that same lullaby when she was sick. Maybe the bakery smelled more strongly of vanilla that morning. Or maybe it was a voice inside her that had been waiting far too long to be heard. The next morning, Emily arrived at school earlier than usual. The grass was still damp with dew. She pedaled slowly across the empty field, her bike creaking with every turn, like the steady breath of someone trying not to be noticed. Outside the principal's office, the sign-up board was nearly full. Names were scribbled in bright orange and green markers, some even decorated with stickers. Jaden, electric drums harper, modern dance mason, real rabbit magic trick. Emily stood there for a long time. In her hand was a small folded slip of paper. Written on it in slightly slanted handwriting was Emily Rhodes, singing. The letters leaned right just like her always, a little off-center from the crowd. She didn't know what she was waiting for, a sign someone to walk by and say, "Yeah, you should do it." But no one came. Then, like she knew that if she didn't do it now, she never would. Emily took a breath, uncapped the pen, and wrote her name at the very bottom, just beneath Addison. Freestyle rap. Emily Rhodes, singing. She didn't look back. She just put the pen away, slipped her hands into her sleeves, and walked off slowly like someone walking through the rain, even though the sun was shining. Not even 15 minutes passed before whispers started spilling down the hallways like ink bleeding into white cotton. Bread Girl signed up to sing. Is she gonna sing with a toaster? Maybe it's a comedy act to start the show. Emily heard all of it. None of the words were loud, but they were sharp enough to pierce what little confidence she had left. She didn't turn around, didn't defend herself. She just kept walking slow and steady, as if each step carried her through a storm no one else could see. That afternoon, back inside their weather-beaten trailer, Catherine stepped into the bedroom and found Emily sitting on the bed notebook, open, quietly rehearsing. Her voice wasn't strong, wasn't clear, but every syllable was held carefully, like someone trying to protect the last spark in a dimming flame. Catherine didn't speak. She simply sat down beside her daughter and rested a hand on her knee. After a while, she said softly, "I used to dream of standing on a stage. But then your grandma got sick, and that dream turned to ash in a hospital room with no windows." Emily didn't look up, but her voice trembled. "If I go up there, will you come?" Catherine's eyes blurred with something she couldn't name. She nodded slowly. "Even if I have to walk." The talent show rehearsal was held that Friday inside the school's multipurpose hall, where an old wooden stage had been cleared of clutter and strings of LED lights flickered on and off like an undecided party. Emily was the last to go. She sat quietly in a blue plastic chair as the others chewed. Candy touched up their hair and practiced TikTok moves blasting from their phones. When the music teacher called her name, no one really noticed. A few soft laughs floated from the back. Is Bread Girl really gonna sing? Maybe she'll use a toaster as a mic. This is gonna be good. Emily climbed onto the stage. No props, no background music, no lights designed just for her. The music teacher glanced at the sign-up sheet, then asked Emily, "Do you have a backing track?" She shook her head. "No, ma'am. I'll sing a cappella." A sigh, a few rolled eyes. But Emily stood in the center, chin-high eyes, scanning the dark auditorium where faces blurred under cold white lighting. She couldn't see anyone clearly, but she knew exactly where her mom would be sitting, third row, right side near the window. She took a breath and began. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" No mic, no accompaniment. Just a bare voice so raw and unpolished it made some students squirm in their seats at first. And then, silence. Not the kind born of boredom, but a different kind. The kind that stretches itself across a room when something unexpectedly honest is unfolding. When even the air seems to listen. A teacher halfway through pouring a cup of coffee paused mid-motion. A student holding a phone lowered it without realizing. The room, so used to noise and performance, now found itself still. Her voice wasn't powerful. It wasn't perfect, but it carried weight, the kind that doesn't ask to be heard, but dares you to listen. When she finished, no one clapped. Not because they didn't like it, but because no one remembered what they were supposed to do after witnessing something that fragile. Emily walked off stage, clutching her notebook. She didn't bow. She didn't look up. But her shoulders no longer curved inward the way they used to. On the way home, she sat beside her mother on the bus and asked if people laughed that day. "Should I stop?" Catherine squeezed her daughter's hand, her voice steady under the hum of the engine. "No, baby. You keep singing. The world needs to hear the voices that were never given a chance." Monday morning. Oak Ridge Elementary shimmered with color. Triangle flags lined the hallways. A temporary stage had been set up in the multi-purpose room beneath a digital banner flashing, "Let your light shine." Emily arrived early. White dress, the only one in her closet that didn't have a stain or tear. Her mom had ironed every fold like she was preparing her for something sacred. Emily's hair was tied into two simple braids. Her face was calm, but her eyes steadfast. In her hands, she clutched the worn notebook. The lyrics were still there. Same page, same tilt in the handwriting. Catherine walked beside her, holding her hand. She'd come straight from the bakery's night shift. Her face looked pale from exhaustion, but her pride was unmistakable. Inside the hall, the show had begun. There were LED dance troupes. A boy rapped with sound effects. One girl sang a pop ballad, mic and hand wireless headset ready. Each act was followed by laughter applause, friends shouting names from the crowd. Emily sat alone backstage. No one approached. There were side glances, whispers. Fairy tale act coming up. She's singing a cappella, right? Heard she doesn't even have music. Just wait. Then came her name. A young teacher stepped up to the mic, her voice hesitant. And now we have a solo performance with no backing track. Singing Scarborough Fair. Please welcome Emily Rhodes. A few scattered claps. Some kids pulled out their phones, half out of curiosity, half out of habit. One student opened their school's private social feed and preloaded a sticker that said, "Here comes the cringe." Emily stepped onto the stage. From where she stood, the audience was a blur. Stage lights washed everything out. She couldn't see her mom, couldn't see faces, couldn't tell who was watching or who wasn't. But she knew one thing: her mother was there. Third row, right side, near the window. And that was enough. She took a breath. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" Her voice rose gently like wind brushing through a wheat field. Soft, steady, not asking for attention, but carrying something truer than performance. At first there were fidgets, shifts, a cough here, a glance there. Then, quiet, not forced, not polite, but complete. It was the kind of silence that doesn't come from boredom, but from being unexpectedly moved. The music teacher, once jotting down notes, looked up and froze. An elderly parent in the fourth row slowly removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. Even a student who had laughed earlier found themselves staring, not sure why. They felt suddenly small. Emily kept singing. No theatrics, no runs, no big finish. Just a girl, and a voice, and a moment. When the final note faded, no one moved. 3 seconds passed, then 4. Then the applause began, not thunderous, not wild, but reverent, like people clapping not because they were told to, but because they needed to. Then someone stood up, an older parent, then another. Then row by row people rose, not because she hit the high note, but because she reminded them what a real one sounded like. Emily stood still, hands gripping the hem of her dress. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. Under the spotlight, she was no longer bread girl. She was a voice that had waited too long, and finally was heard. Catherine rose last. One hand over her heart, eyes red, mouth smiling. After the show, the hallway buzzed with life again. Laughter returned. So did the noise, the selfies, the glittery headbands, and the congratulatory hugs between kids with matching t-shirts and plastic trophies. Emily stepped down from the stage, notebook still in hand. No one rushed to greet her. No one asked for photos. But for the first time, the quiet around her didn't feel like absence. It felt like aftermath. And then she saw a woman standing alone near the hallway exit. White blouse, name badge clipped to her side. Not looking at anyone else. Just waiting. Their eyes met. "Are you Emily Rhodes?" Emily nodded, unsure. "I'm Rebecca Lorne, director of the Redfield Youth Ensemble," the woman said. "I was here today because my daughter danced earlier, but truthfully, you're the reason I stayed." Emily blinked. Her fingers tightened slightly on her notebook. Rebecca continued, her voice calm, almost private. "I'd like to invite you to our studio this Saturday. Not for an audition, not for a performance. Just so I can hear you sing again. In quiet." Emily opened her mouth to respond, but her voice caught. She looked around like someone unsure if the invitation was real or if it was meant for someone standing behind her. Rebecca smiled gently and took out a card. "We have a summer scholarship program. It's made for kids who've never had formal training, but have something real. All I ask is, bring yourself." There was a pause. Then Emily asked softly, "Can I bring my mom?" Rebecca's smile deepened, not with politeness, but with warmth that came from something personal. "If your mother is the reason you sing like that, I think we'd be honored to meet her." That evening on the bus ride home, Emily said almost nothing. She sat quietly holding the business card in both hands, flipping it over and over again, like if she let go for even a second, it might disappear. Catherine didn't press, didn't ask 100 questions. She just looked out the window and said almost to herself, "Some doors don't have handles. They only open when you sing from your gut." Emily looked down at her hands. The card was still there, and her fingers were steady. Saturday morning. Redfield baked under a rare golden sky, not a single cloud, as if the day had scrubbed itself clean for something quietly important. Emily and her mother boarded the earliest bus out of town, one canvas bag between them. Inside her lyric notebook, a bottle of water and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. They didn't talk much, but both of them sat straighter than usual. The studio was tucked inside a red brick building with ivy along the windows. No neon sign, no glossy front desk, just a brass plaque beside the door. "Lorne Music, sound is story." Rebecca was already waiting. She wore a gray cardigan and no makeup, but her eyes had that same calm focus, like she never forgot why she was here. "This must be your mother," she said, extending a hand. "Very nice to meet you." Catherine smiled shyly. Rebecca turned to Emily. "I've got a room ready, just you me, and whatever you want to sing." Catherine stayed in the front room. She didn't speak as Emily followed Rebecca down the hallway. But the look she gave her daughter, half proud, half nervous, felt like a goodbye and a beginning all at once. The recording booth was small, the walls lined with acoustic foam. A soft amber light overhead made everything feel quiet, like a dream that hadn't quite ended. Behind the glass sat a man with salt and pepper stubble named Leo. Studio engineer, headphones around his neck. His fingers moved over the console like he'd done this 1,000 times, and probably had. He looked up when Emily walked in, lifted one eyebrow not in judgment, but in surprise. "This, the kid," he said into the intercom. "She's the one," Rebecca replied. "Trust me, just let her sing." Leo adjusted the mic, lowered it to her height. Emily stepped up and took a breath, then glanced over her shoulder at Rebecca. "Do you want to sing Scarborough Fair again? Or something else?" Rebecca asked gently. Emily turned toward the glass. On the other side, Catherine was sitting on a small chair looking back at her. "I'll sing the one my mom used to sing," she said. No music, just quiet. Leo leaned forward, fingers hovering. Emily closed her eyes and sang. Her voice didn't fill the room. It unfolded into it, like a breath that had waited years to be released. Like sunlight through sheer curtains, soft, unannounced, and undeniable. Each lyric floated through the still air as if it belonged there. Not forced, not polished, just real. When the last note faded, no one in the control room moved. Not for a full 5 seconds. Then Leo cleared his throat. "She's never had vocal training." "No," Rebecca said. "None at all." He looked at the mic, then at Emily, then back to Rebecca. "She holds tempo, breath control, but more than that, she doesn't reach for emotion. She already has it." Rebecca stepped into the booth and took Emily's hand gently. "Did you know Scarborough Fair is a folk song hundreds of years old?" "My mom sings it a lot," Emily replied. "She says it's a lullaby for dreamers." Rebecca smiled softly. "Maybe that's why your voice finds people the way it does." That afternoon, Rebecca sent the recording to the admissions board at Emerson School of Music, where she sat on the advisory panel. It was part of a highly selective summer scholarship for rural youth. Only 2 spots were granted each year. You don't have to beat anyone, Rebecca told her. You just have to be you. 3 weeks after the recording, summer had arrived in Redfield with no warning, dry, bright, and relentless. The bakery extended its hours for highway travelers needing cold drinks and sugary comfort. Catherine worked both shifts sometimes, napping with flour still on her apron. Emily spent her breaks folding pastry boxes and writing orders in pencil on brown paper. Life returned to normal. But inside Emily something didn't. Each morning she glanced at the mailbox even when her mom told her it was still too soon. Most days it held only bills coupons and repair shop flyers. But one morning wedged between junk mail and a grocery ad was something different. A pale blue envelope. No return address. Just one neat line. Emerson School of Music, Austin. Catherine held the envelope first, hands trembling slightly. She handed it to Emily and sat down on the wooden trailer steps like she couldn't trust her legs to keep standing. Emily opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a sheet of thick, ivory-colored paper. The typeface was elegant. No bold headlines, just quiet certainty. Dear Emily Rhodes, the admissions board of Emerson School of Music has reviewed your recording. With unanimous approval, we are honored to offer you a place in this year's summer scholarship program in Austin. All tuition, travel, and lodging expenses will be fully covered. We believe in your voice, not just the sound of it, but the reason behind it. Sincerely, Emerson Admissions Committee. Emily read it once, then again. By the third time, she still wasn't sure she was breathing. Catherine hadn't moved. Her hands pressed flat against her chest. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. You got in. Emily nodded. Mom, she said softly. I got in. No one jumped up and down. No squealing. No glitter. No Instagram post. Just a moment. A soft breeze. 2 women on a wooden step. And a dream that had once been buried beside a hospital bed, now taking its first breath in the open. June in Austin burned bright. The sun stretched across the city like a sheet of gold, weaving its way through the ancient oak trees that lined the hills. And up there, nestled atop the highest one, stood the Emerson School of Music. Its red brick buildings looked timeless, like they belonged more to memory than to the present. Frosted glass windows caught the morning light in patterns like old stained glass from a chapel of sound. To most kids, the summer program felt like a prestigious camp. To Emily Rhodes, it felt like another planet. She dragged her old suitcase up the stone path. Around her, girls in floral dresses carried monogrammed duffels and sparkling water bottles with names etched in gold. Some had flown in from New York. Others came from LA, San Francisco. Most had vocal coaches since age 7. Some had sung in real theaters. Some already had headshots. Emily had a secondhand notebook, 2 good blouses, and a voice no one had ever taught how to describe. Orientation was held beneath a domed skylight. Rebecca Lorne, now dressed in a navy blouse, standing at a podium, welcomed them all. Here at Emerson, she said, her voice warm, but even we don't seek perfection. We seek stories. A voice doesn't have to be loud to last. Often the quietest ones echo longest. Emily held on to that line, but it didn't take long to realize not everyone believed it. The first class was vocal anatomy. Each student received a full-color chart of the larynx, diaphragm, vocal folds, and resonance zones. The teacher spoke fast. Who knows if their voice is soprano, mezzo, or alto? Emily stayed quiet. A girl beside her turned and asked, "Haven't you been assigned a vocal range?" Emily hesitated. "I've only ever sung with my mom." There was no judgment in the other girl's face, just polite confusion. But Emily felt it, the shift, the invisible ripple, the moment when you realize you're not just behind, you're not even in the same race. In music theory, she couldn't read notes fast enough. In technique, her breath faltered. Once her nerves got so tangled, she forgot the lyrics mid-song and stood there, silent as the room stared. At night, she sat alone on the stone bench behind the auditorium. Lights flickered dimly in the garden path. Fireflies came and went. She opened her notebook, tried to write something. But the pen hovered like even her handwriting wasn't sure it belonged here. Then a familiar voice broke the silence. Rebecca, holding 2 cups of mint tea. She sat down without a word, placed one beside Emily. They didn't speak for a while. Then Emily whispered, "I don't think I belong here." Rebecca turned her head slightly, listening, not shocked, not sympathetic. Just listening. "Why do you think that?" "Because I don't know what they know. I'm not like them. I come from nowhere." Rebecca let out a slow breath, not of weariness, but of memory. "I came from a nowhere town, too," she said. "Showed up here with a beat-up guitar and an accent no one could name. I didn't know theory either. People laughed at me, too. But one professor told me something I never forgot. Technique can be taught. Emotion can't. If you bring that, then don't ever let this place take it from you." Emily didn't respond, not with words. But she looked down at her notebook, pressed her palm against the page, as if to remind herself the voice was still there. The final week at Emerson began with the sound of a piano echoing through the practice halls, someone rehearsing 1,000 Dreams late into dusk. Even the courtyard felt quieter, like the whole place was holding its breath. The end-of-session performance was coming. Voice of the Summer, that's what they called it. Each student was to perform a solo. Some chose Broadway showstoppers. Others picked Italian arias or jazz standards with full backing tracks. By then, some kids had already caught the attention of guest faculty and scouts. Emily, she hadn't signed up. Not yet. She didn't ask for advice, didn't talk about it. She just sat by the library window in the afternoon light, flipping through her notebook. On one page, she'd crossed out Scarborough Fair, and beneath it, in darker ink, "You Are My Sunshine." It wasn't a showy song, not something to win applause. It didn't rise, it didn't swell, but it had walked with her through every season. Her mom used to hum it while they trudged home from the bakery, arms full of half-priced leftovers and rain in their shoes. Sometimes Catherine's voice would crack mid-line. Sometimes she didn't finish the song. But somehow that made it feel more real. "You make me happy when skies are gray." It was a lullaby, yes, but it was also a truth. On rehearsal day, the student lineup was posted. Names in neat type, each one followed by a performance note. Classical piece in D minor original composition with loop pedal contemporary pop medley. Near the bottom, Emily Rhodes, "You Are My Sunshine," unaccompanied. No one said anything, but some eyebrows raised. She stepped onto the rehearsal stage. No spotlight, no mic, just her, and the voice she brought with her. "You are my sunshine." Soft, low, unhurried. It didn't try to impress. It simply remembered. And somehow that was enough. Across the room, someone lowered their pen mid-scribble. Another student stopped chewing gum. Even Eliza, the girl from Boston who had once rolled her eyes at Emily's notebook, lifted her gaze and said nothing. Because in that moment, Emily wasn't performing. She was recalling something. A sandwich in wax paper, wet shoes on linoleum. A mother too tired to finish the chorus, but still singing, "You make me happy." And when she reached the final line, "Please don't take my sunshine away," the silence that followed wasn't the silence of polite respect. It was the silence of something returning to its source, of music remembering what it was for in the first place. The final night of summer. Willow Hall, a century-old concert auditorium, glowed under a soft summer rain. Umbrellas dotted the sidewalk outside. Inside, every seat was filled more than 500 people, parents, musicians, instructors, even a few talent scouts in tailored suits. Emily waited backstage, her heart steady but quiet. She wore a pale blue dress hand-stitched from 2 old blouses by a kind teacher in the dorms. Her hair was loosely tied back. Around her neck, a small sun-shaped pendant, the only gift her mother had ever bought. New, back when Emily turned 10. Catherine sat in the 4th row, her cotton dress still damp from the night bus out of Redfield. In her lap, a small pastry box. Not to hand out, just something to carry. Something from home. When the MC announced Emily's name, there was a low murmur. Some people didn't expect much. An old folk song. No piano, no arrangement, but no one looked away. Emily stepped into the light. She couldn't see her mother, couldn't see the crowd, just a wall of white light and the memory of a rainy day. She took a breath. "You are my sunshine." Her voice was soft, not dramatic, not show-stopping, but true. Each word reached not just ears, but places inside people that hadn't been touched in a long time. She didn't just sing lyrics. She sang a lifetime. Nights without power, half loaves of bread, 2 arms holding her in the dark, singing despite the weariness. You make me happy when skies are gray. The auditorium went still. One parent in the 3rd row put a hand to his chest. A student intern pressed their fingertips to their lips. Rebecca Lorne, seated near the back, looked up, eyes glassy, mouth closed tight. And when the final line came drawn out, almost whispered, "Please don't take my sunshine away." One person stood. Catherine. She didn't clap. She didn't cry. She just stood, hands over her hard eyes full, saying everything without words. "That's my daughter. And I have heard her. With all my life." Then another person stood. And another. Until the entire room rose together, not for perfection, not for showmanship, but for something pure that had just passed through them. Emily didn't move. Not at first. Then she bowed. Not out of obligation, but out of something quieter, deeper. Gratitude. The next morning in a diner a few blocks from the hall, Rebecca slid an envelope across the table. "The Academy met last night," she said. "Unanimous vote. They want to offer you full admission for the year-round program. No audition required." Catherine put down her fork. Tears quietly streaked down her face. Emily asked barely above a whisper, "Can my mom come with me?" Rebecca smiled. "If your mother is the reason you sing like that, then I think the school would be honored." Years later, during a televised interview, when Emily Rhodes had become a celebrated singer and songwriter, the host asked, "What moment changed your life the most?" She didn't pause. "The moment my mother stood up in the crowd. When no one else knew who I was, she did. And for me, that was enough."